I want to welcome all of you. All of us knew Mike Brown. Most of us here worked with Mike Brown. And we're here today to dedicate a plaque honoring his outstanding legal career. Now, what's the significance of today? Well, I'll tell you. Tomorrow, November 16th, it will be the 15th anniversary when Mike Brown started as an assistant prosecutor in Lake County. So we're celebrating that anniversary. Why a plaque? This is the first of its kind in the Lake County Prosecutor's Office, where we're going to have a plaque that will honor and memorialize an assistant prosecutor. It will be permanently hung in the office, hopefully to last as long as Lake County lasts. And why are we honoring Mike Brown? Simply put, Mike Brown was a prosecutor's prosecutor. Let me tell you a little bit about him. And I'm going to talk about his legal career. Mike graduated magna cum laude from law school, 10th in his class. He could have gotten a job with any large law firm in Cleveland, anywhere he wanted, at a very high salary, much higher than a prosecutor would make. But Mike Brown wanted to be a prosecutor. Now in Ohio, we call them prosecutors, prosecuting attorneys. But the prosecutor's office is a full-service law firm. We do civil work, we represent the county, the boards, the commissions, the elected officials, and so we do as much civil work as we do criminal work. Some states call them state's attorneys, district attorneys, county attorneys. We call them prosecutors. And Mike was driven to do prosecutor work in the civil division. He especially loved doing the real estate work, tax collection. Mike Brown was one of the smartest, if not the smartest lawyer I've ever met. His mind was constantly in action. The Lake County Prosecutor's Office is a very busy place. Every lawyer has a large caseload. Not only are they handling lawsuits and legal opinions, they're handling day-to-day telephone calls from elected officials, from boards, from commissions, from employees of the county calling them up and wanting their opinion. And I looked up the number of the caseload for every attorney that we had in the civil division. And it was a large caseload for every attorney, except for Mike Brown. His caseload was over twice that of every other attorney in the office. And he could handle all of it, and he did it well. Any of you that he represented, you know that he was excited to do your work. I know Sheriff, he would come in there and he would say, "Sheriff, don't worry about this lawsuit, I'm taking care of it." And the sheriff was convinced it was taken care of. And it was. I know we would have cases come in, and rather than assigning them, Mike would go through them real quick and say, "I want this one," and grab it, and take it, and go off and do the work. "I want this one," and grab it, and take it, and go off and do the work. He was phenomenal. In fact, we did have a little problem with him because when we needed legal opinions, we'd say, "Mike, County Commissioner wants a legal memo on this." And so Mike would sit down, type up the memo, and hand it to us. There wouldn't be a legal authority in it. We'd look at it and we'd say, well, Mike, you didn't cite any authority." He says, "Well, I'm saying that's the law." And we'd go look it up, and he was right. That was the law. Every time. But we did tell him the client would feel better if they knew the Supreme Court said that too, not just Mike Brown. Mike Brown loved being a prosecutor. His mind could not remain idle. He had a great sense of life. I remember not too long ago the commissioners decided they were going to put their pictures up on the wall out there. You know where they are. County commissioners, and we have the 3 current county commissioners, and Commissioner Dan Troy didn't like his picture. So he had it removed because he was going to replace the picture. As soon as Mike saw that bare spot, he couldn't stop himself. He went down to find a commissioner's picture from the 1800s with a long beard, put it in Dan Troy's place, and Dan Troy couldn't understand why everybody was complimenting on his picture. I remember one time I was out of the office and my chief assistant Dale Condis was in charge and he had to leave early. So as he's leaving, he goes by Mike Brown's office. He says, "Hey Mike, you're in charge. I'm leaving." Mike said, "Okay." Well, the next morning we found out the first thing Mike did was get on the intercom, close down the office, send everybody home. Except he stayed and worked. Mike Brown was a great prosecutor. So it is only fitting and proper that we remember him and honor him in this way, so that this plaque can be an inspiration to every assistant prosecutor who works in Lake County. And that's why we have the plaque today. You know, my predecessor, Steve LaTourette, now Congressman, we have some things in common. We're very lucky. We both got to serve as a Lake County prosecutor. We're both exceedingly handsome. But more importantly, we both had the privilege of working with Mike Brown. And that's something we're going to remember. And I'd like to introduce Congressman Steve LaTourette.
Thank you, Chuck, and it's an honor to be here. I want to thank Chuck for inviting me to let me be part of today. And Chuck was telling me before we began what he was going to say, and I said, you're going to lose the crowd with that handsome thing. But luckily he didn't. And there are also some things, if I listen to his remarks very carefully, I could take issue with. I mean, Dale Conda's leaving early. I find that to be a stretch. It was always arriving late, was my recollection. I was thinking today as I was coming back from Washington that there's a number of ways that you measure a person's life. And one of it is by your friends. And I think as you see and you look at the person next to you across the room, Mike's life measured hugely by the amount of people that are gathered here today. Those of us that had the pleasure of working with him and know him know that he was a good lawyer, as Chuck's gone out. He was a great prosecutor. He was a good son. He was a good brother. He was a good friend. He was just a good man. There were some things, however, that you also remember about him that made him sort of off the beaten path despite all of his wonderful accomplishments. It wasn't unusual to go have lunch with Mike at Ponderosa with Dale and Bob Payne at the time and see this little guy eat more chicken wings and chicken rice soup than you thought he could fit into his body. It also wasn't unusual to go to the senior citizens restaurant from time to time and be enjoying a meal, and all of a sudden a buttered roll would hit you in the back of the head. It would be Mike that sent it over. And I think, you know, Bob Payne and Mike are also pretty well joined at the hip, and it wasn't unusual, and it's sort of a standing joke in the fantasy football league that we all share, a number of us share, that they always, no matter what year it was, no matter where we were drafting, they were always drafting a guy named Alfred Papuno, and they needed Alfred Papuno on their team. Mike's accomplishments in the civil division were legendary. I can remember when we celebrated his life at the memorial service talking about the caseload, and I remember his caseload, at least in Mike's mind, being many, many, many times what everybody else was doing. But there are some cases that stick out in your mind, and I can remember that when Chuck says Mike's mind was always going a million miles an hour, it was, and we always had to sort of throttle that in a little bit because he very much, one of his fondest wishes, I think, would have been to drop the ball. He said he always wanted to plug up the sewer for Unaroy and keep that from dumping into the system and killing the bugs. I don't think Mike quite understood the wastewater treatment system very well, but he did understand that there were bugs that needed to eat the stuff in the system, and he wanted to punish Unaroy in the worst way. And the other thing that measures a person's life are the memories that all of us have as we leave here today. And I really want to commend Chuck and the prosecutor's office, and with no disrespect to people that work in other offices in the county. For my money, the Lake County Prosecutor's Office is the finest office in the county, and it's one of the finest prosecutor's offices in the country. And the men and women that work there deserve our appreciation, and Mike certainly was at the top of that list. And some of his work will live on. One of the cases Mike was working on is the valuation of the Perry nuclear power plant, and my understanding is that case continues on today. And some people have suggested that it isn't Mike's memory that lives on in that case. It's that Jim Dugan's now in charge, and it's going to take a couple of other people's lifetimes before it's completed. It is, in fact, something that continues on. I was lucky to work with Mike. I was lucky to work with all the men and women in the prosecutor's office, and I think that this plaque, Chuck, is a great idea, a way to remember a fellow who touched a lot of lives. And I extend my appreciation to you and also to Pat and the family for letting us share with Mike for the years that you let us share with him. And I hope that everybody that comes into this building gets the opportunity to see this plaque, admire this plaque, and I hope that, rather than asking about Dan Troy's picture, years from now somebody comes up and says, what's that plaque about, and who was that fellow? and I hope that there's enough of us around at that moment in time to tell the story of Mike Brown. Thank you for letting me be here.
I want to introduce somebody you know very well, Pat Brown.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today. That Michael would have absolutely loved this. He loved his job. He loved the people he worked with. This is a tremendous honor and privilege. I wish I had some amusing anecdote to tell you, and I unfortunately don't. But suffice to say that Michael would absolutely love this, and thank you very much for all of your support. Thank you.
Before we unveil this, I want to tell you a little bit about this plaque that will be permanently mounted in the prosecutor's office in the skylight area. When we first had the idea to do this, we were going to use a color photograph. In fact, we were going to use the photograph that you saw when you came in. But I started thinking, color photograph isn't going to last that long. Color photographs start to fade in 20 years. So I thought we would go to metal, something permanent, something that would last. Maybe 150 years, maybe longer. Because I thought it was important that new prosecutors coming to Lake County know about Mike Brown, how hard he worked, what a great job he did. But I didn't want just a photograph either. I wanted something that would show the essence. So when they looked at this picture of Mike Brown, they would know something about him. And luckily, is Jim Collins here from the News Herald? Luckily, Jim Collins wrote a beautiful editorial about Mike Brown after his death. And it talked about what a good lawyer he was, what a good person he was, and about his life. And it was a very motivating editorial. So I thought what we would do is then we would embrace in bronze that same editorial along with this photograph so that it too, those words will last for 150 years. So people, when they come up and see the picture of Mike Brown, they won't know, well, who is that? They'll know why it's there, and it will motivate them. Pat, if you would please. Thank you for coming. Please come up and look at it. We have cookies, we have punch, and we're very honored that you're here. And Mike Brown would say, I'm the first and only one to have one of these. Please join us for cookies.
Very nicely done there. Very nicely done.
Gotta get the judges and chief deputies.